Welcome. Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church. Our goal is to be a beacon of liberal religious thought here in the South Bay. Provided you keep your mask on, we're a pretty welcoming place. The recipe for hope is the recipe for this church is essentially a big heaping dose of love, a good equal portion of tolerance. Add to that a solid base of commitment to justice, an overflowing big spoonful of wisdom, hopefully, and a healthy dose of humility and an equal portion of humor, and mostly pretty good, inspiring music. So we hope to be that here, and we just want to, we've been doing a lot of stuff. We've been doing a lot of stuff on race lately, and we've been referring to people, to us as white, which is, mostly true, but I want to make sure that everyone who isn't a white person feels like they're welcome. That's, just the language has been focused with the reading in nice racism. We want to make sure everybody is seen, feels seen because they are. Let's see. We have a couple bits of information around holiday gift drives, which are with Rainbow Services, but we also might conceivably do something with Toberman as well. But there's some information on the back flyer back there. There's your classic Thanksgiving food drive, non-perishables for Rainbow Services, and then we're going to do a drive for families that serve that. This is essentially a domestic violence support shelter, kind of, not a shelter, but it's a support network for those folks, so kids in need. So think about that as we move towards the holiday season a little bit closer. We're going to start a grief group on Wednesday, November 3rd, and we're going to use that 1 o'clock on Wednesday. We're going to use that time. We don't know if that'll be the regular meeting time, but we've got periodically people come with, needs of grief, and, I'm going to sort of undefine it and leave it relatively open. Wednesday, November 3rd, we'll talk about that. On Friday, November 5th, we're going to show here in our second of our, what feels like ideally is a regular monthly social justice movie program. We're going to show Kiss the Earth, which is about sustainable farming. We have Angela's dinner tonight. We've got the coming of age group starting. We also have hearing aids in the back. Melissa playing our Price is Right guide, Vanna White back there. We have hearing aids for people who struggle to hear well. We've got Seekers this week, Wednesday at 10. Anyone who wants to come, we sort of explore some spiritual issue in discussion. It's a great little group. We have seniors this week at 2 on Tuesday. If you define yourself as a senior in any way, you're welcome to that. And not senior in high school, but you're welcome to. November 6th, we're going to start a 6-week spirituality adult ed program on Saturday mornings, which is that 10 o'clock slot, which we're trying to hold on to and make alive. We have begun to announce that we stand on Tongva land. That's a relatively new tradition for us, which is true, we do. And we also, there's a memorial that was sort of blessed and unveiled on Saturday up in Albacone Cove to the Tongva people. That was a fishing spot for them. We would have been there, except I was leading an adult ed program. So if you want to go to Albacone Cove and see an acknowledgement of the native peoples who lived here, that's something to check out. Okay, I think that's enough. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Leanne, and she's going to read us our chalice words and introduce the service with our opening words.
Good morning. A faith beyond knowing. May this chalice flame bright with the light of faith beyond knowing. May it vanquish the shadows of fear and suspicion, illuminating for us a universe of plenty, the beauty that surrounds us, the goodness in every human heart, and the love that holds us all. In our opening words, we want to tell you about what's going to happen today. You may have noticed that there is a wealth or glut of superhero movies, video games, and streaming series out these days. There just seem to be a lot of them with fanciful characters that have epic powers and battles, tragic flaws, and magical gifts. They stand in a long line of films intended to take us to another world, but tell us a unique version of a similar tale. Epic in the way Wizard of Oz and Star Wars are, innate in the appeal that a film like Rocky had. It could be argued, well, it is argued, that the classics become classics because they were always shifting contemporary versions of the stories we have already been telling ourselves. From the long before the Greeks started playing pretend with the gods, and longer still before Grimm was recording his fairy tales. Essentially, whether the stories about hero's journey or about personal transformation are told on the screen or around a campfire, the best of them have a mythical quality that harkens in us human truth. That's what Reverend Steve will be talking about today on the sturdy shoulders of little Dorothy from Kansas.
I invite you all to mumble through. We're not allowed to sing yet, but you can sing, and I won't call you on it if you're in your mask. Morning has broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing where God's feet pass.
Shane is back. That's always nice. I'd like to invite all our young and young at heart down for our children's moment. Come on down. Kim wore her green boots to be the Wicked Witch of the West today. So we're talking about The Wizard of Oz. Who's seen it? I assume you've all seen The Wizard of Oz? Yeah? So we have some sort of, it's a classic tale, of course, that has some pretty cool messages in it, right? The main message that we Unitarians have taken out of that is that, I'm going to steal a chair here. Let me steal that chair. Yeah, sorry. Well, it's too close. So, it looks ominous if I stand above the kids. So, what do you think the message of Wizard of Oz is? No, don't put it in front of me. Anyone? Into the microphone. Okay. All right.
That what you were looking for was inside you more.
Okay, I think we're done. That's about right. Yep. Jake said that what's inside of you, what you're looking for is already inside of you, which is a classic message, right? That is the message of the thing. So the lion, what is the lion searching for? Courage. There's other messages there. Be careful. What's this say?
Okay. Be careful about how you approach what you think is strange.
That's another message hidden into the Wizard of Oz, of course. And then I couldn't find slippers, and I didn't have time to buy them. So this is Dorothy's ruby slippers. Not a personal possession, but thanks for asking. And then we have who is searching for brains in the movie? The Scarecrow.
The scarecrow.
The Scarecrow's searching for brains, and he realizes he's actually pretty smart, right? He actually, and then the Tin Man, as you can see, this was a well thought out children's moment. The Tin Man is made of tin, but he really, out of his love for his friends, discovers that he has what? He's got heart. So there you go. So the message is, it's been promoted as a Christian tale, and it's been critiqued as not being Christian enough by many, and it's beloved. And my mom was born, it's special to me because my mom was born about 2 weeks after The Wizard of Oz was released, so I always think of the two of them together. So there we are. All right, let's sing out our children with our Singing Out Our Children's song. Go with wisdom. You can sing this one. I won't tell the CDC.
Go with wisdom, go with wonder, go to meet a brand new day. Learn to see the light within you as you send you on your way.
So it is time for our centering hymn. 'Tis a gift to be simple. You can just sit meditatively and allow this to be a time of quiet reflection for you.
Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
For those of you who are new, we have a tradition in this church of lighting candles of joys and concerns. Prior to COVID, people would come up and light a candle, but we're going to light them for them, and I'm going to run around and invite people to share what's on their hearts or minds. Leanne is going to deliver our prayer here.
Joseph Campbell says to see life as a poem and yourself participating in that poem is what a living myth can do for you. We think this poem, For a New Beginning by John Donahoe, speaks to this. In our way of the place of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has been watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside of you. Notice how you will yourself on, still unable to leave what you have outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped into a new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dreams, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destiny is not clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning. This is one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back, learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm for your soul's senses. The world awaits you.
Silence is enough, isn't it? It's nice. Thanks for being here. This sermon is not new territory, it's the oldest of territories. The natural place to begin this sermon is on the set of a dull farmhouse in Kansas, or maybe the movie set cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, or maybe in a lit for effect cold meat processing place in a rough part of Philly where Rocky Balboa famously and heroically bloodied his knuckles on some cold dead cows hanging for slaughter. But because this film we're going to discuss is about the deep human need to tell and see such stories, we're going to begin in Sweden about 100 years ago with a Swede named Carl Jung. Probably familiar with Carl Jung. He was one of the early voices in psychotherapy and came to believe that our psyches, in fact, all psyches of all humans in all eras, from all cultures, basically share this combination of nerves and brains and have inherited a legacy of symbols that we might call sort of a shared human spiritual software. Jung, from observation and no doubt a little bit of speculation, he's basically not really revered that much for this particular thought anymore, he came to believe that essentially all humans have deeply hired into us these primitive ideas and drives and even symbols. Theorizing more than a century ago, Jung wouldn't have used the term hardwiring or software to describe what he saw as these universal symbols that we across time share, but he called them archetypes. Essentially, we retell and live out these same drives and themes, he said, and more controversially, even symbols become universal. The horse, for example, is one of them. We're born with a satisfying desire to see these things. Joseph Campbell came to talk about one of the things that's archetypal is the hero's journey. I can't think of a better sort of theme for Danny, who I've grown close to, is sort of on his own hero's journey, battling cancer and the whole family fighting there. So you could set this in the living room up there in their home. Persistence of so many of the mythic tales from the past and so many of the present characters in books and movies involving the journey, it's become a trope almost. But the hero's journey makes it valuable for us. One of the reasons that it's such compelling art is that the reader, the listener, the viewer, whoever it is, experiences the tale not only as an observer, but in a way as a participant. The best of it draws you into that level. Unconsciously, we're invited to identify with heroes like Katniss from the Hunger Games and Frodo from the Lord of the Rings and Rocky and Luke and little Dorothy from Kansas and 1,000 others, demanding that we root for them, almost demand that we admiredly walk with them on their adventure. And they, in a way, serve as guides and mentors for us on our journey. Somewhat odd but true, what every scholar of the Greek gods and comic book people today can attest to, we also have to have these tragic flaws, these heroes of ours, weaknesses, quirks, vices that resonate with us on a primitive level because we, of course, are imperfect too. These journeys resonate with us on a primitive level. They make for some of the most powerful tools in a storyteller's toolbox. I've noticed in an age in that we now better understand, better than ever before, the different ways people think, and you think about Asperger's and ADHD, we're in a phase of troubled sort of genius heroes, right? Monk and House, Watson, The Blacklist, Beautiful Mind, they're all examples of this. It needs to be said that under Jung's work under a more sensitive eye, it came to be seen as pretty sexist and designed for male audiences alone. Maureen Murdoch, as another woman, if you want to follow the hero's journey in a more feminine form, she wrote a book called The Heroines Journey, which is a female take on this mostly large male perspective. In the 20th century, we get heroes like Dorothy from Oz and, like I said, Luke and Sly Stallone from Philly. And their journey to their best self is never the pure journey, right? In all different and yet similar ways, the separation from who they could be and who they are is really the journey we all take, right? Almost always this journey has a physical quality to it and a geographical quality to it. Dorothy's calling is, of course, to get away from her Kansas home that feels dull and gray, filmed in black and white, as you know. Rocky is beginning to sort of has this opportunity to fight the champ, but he's got to fight through the fact that he's believed himself to be a nobody, a loser. He has to redefine himself in a new way to meet the opportunity that's presented him. They also, on the hero's journey, we find these mentors and guides, right? Skywalker meets Obi-Wan Kenobi and then eventually Yoda. Dorothy meets Glenda. Rocky meets his trainer Mickey. And he begins to also get off onto the start of a new relationship with the equally unimpressive on the surface pet store worker Adrian. Adrian! These mentors, all in their own way, walk with us and guide them in a new way. And they face ordeals. I want to pause my words here for a minute to think about where you are in your hero's journey, or where you've been, maybe who's guided you. Our heroes all triumph because the inner force of their characters that at the beginning lies dormant within them begins because of their trials to grow. Luke, as it turns out, genetically has this high dose of the Force coursing in him. Rocky finds out that on the unlikely chance that he is the schmuck that the flashy champ beats up, it's actually his hard scrabble life has made him tougher than anyone could have imagined. But before either of them can complete their journey, they have to be developed and tested. They have to become, as we all do, ourselves in a new way. There's no better example of this than The Wizard of Oz. Gary Kowalski says that we keep telling this tale, it keeps getting repeated because we can't quite put it down. In that The Wizard of Oz is a classic telling of the hero's journey, it's become a favorite that because it has a female protagonist, relatively rare. It's kind of why I lifted this one up over the other ones. It used to be on around every year at Christmas. I vaguely remember that, but I do remember rueing its return every year. I grew up as a kid unable to watch The Wizard of Oz. I was too scared, but I was drawn in to ever sit through much. I remember 2 years in a row, well, The Witch and the Flying Monkeys just terrified me. And I remember I got in this weird habit of standing in the bushes and watching it through my windows, my neighbor's window. That was where I watched it, or at least portions of it a couple times. It felt like it was a safer distance that way. I wouldn't have been able to know that. Thankfully, my immediate neighbor was my aunt and uncle, so nobody called the cops. It wasn't expected that that movie become the classic that it is. It was made because it was a popular children's book, and they knew that it probably got the green light because they knew that it had a base audience. And it turned out to be the great, movie that was played out in Technicolor, one of the first films filmed in this, new capacity of color. So let's follow Dorothy on her journey. It opens in black and white, right, in this seemingly Kansas farm where stable, loving people, her aunt and uncle. So it begins in context. Dorothy's a bored, sort of, young teenager. Perfect visual is that just everything sort of happens in kind of a flat way. It was also timely because America was coming out of the Great Depression at that time, right? In the story, our plainly dressed American white girl, they only made films about white girls back then, is hardly alone as a simple caricature. This is typical. We almost always on the hero's journey meet our hero or heroine before they grow into who they are in their normal pre-themselves context. This is like the pre-shot of a diet, right? A diet show. Jesus is the same way, born in a manger as humble places, essentially raised presumably by his stepdad as a carpenter. Luke is in this backwater town trying to fix his little rover and trying to master his lightsaber. It's always the before photograph. And then there's always this time in which they refuse their first call. That tends to be part of the journey. They decide that they're not ready, or they don't take on the call that will challenge their destiny. Pause here for anyone to think in hindsight about challenges that they refused or opportunities that they might not have taken yet. Then after the failure of this sort of initial opportunity, we see the return of another challenge, and almost always the hero or heroine accepts the next opportunity. It's at the early stage here where Luke meets Obi-Wan, and we see him learning to play with his lightsaber, but what is the chief skill that he has this time that he didn't have before? He trusts, right? He learns to close his eyes and let go a little bit. Trust in the Force, he begins to become sort of a master of it. Back in Kansas, Dorothy gets what scholars call the hero's journey, when the dog is taken and threatened by the evil sort of school mom, who we know turns into the witch, right? And then she doesn't get a chance to not accept the next challenge because a tornado drops down, grabs her, and sticks her in the freaky land of Technicolor with munchkins and places where witches float around in bubbles. That ought to get your attention. Once having touched down safely in Oz, Dorothy meets her mentor, Glenda the Good Witch, from whom she gets the commission that she is special and that she has to go down the long journey to the yellow brick road to see the wizard. In the classical understanding of the hero's journey, taking those first few steps of winding and unwinding who we were is thought of as crossing the threshold. That's one of the phrases they use, or Campbell uses. The land of Oz is completely different, fills her with a sort of an odd mix. The hero's journey or heroine's journey always has a mix of fear and excitement, of course, right? Curiosity, all of those mixed together. And she's doing something she sort of dreamed of doing, but she's also on the road to try to get back home. What Dorothy doesn't know yet is that all heroes and heroines' journey inevitably means that there's tests, there's allies, and there's ordeals that make you stronger. But stronger so you can return back to where you were, a different person. The plot's probably ingrained in your memory. Be a good time to pause and interject that the word hero comes from the Greek root that means to protect and serve. So even though the journey is always geographical in nature, people travel, they go on an odyssey of some kind or another. And they often have something like an elixir, like a holy grail to get, something kind of magical is involved usually. We should not understand the journey as being really much more anything than internal. So much as strong, brave, physical, and dramatic acts are required in this journey. It's really a journey of self-sacrifice and an understanding of where a smaller ego meets a bigger one in a weird way. In our writing group, anyone who's in our writing group a couple of years ago, I asked them to retell a classic tale, but from the perspective of the villain, which was fun. And what we see in so many of the villains, so many of our shadow sides, the Wicked Witch to Darth Vader, is when the hero's journey to know oneself gets twisted, we become oppressors rather than liberators. Even the wizard, who for Dorothy plays the role of having both magical powers, he helps her deal with her own disillusionment, and he has to deal with his own authenticity. The specific actions of any journey is not what matters most. The journey to a new self might likely just as well be spent sitting cross-legged on a pillow, eyes half open, than in the cockpit of the Millennial Falcon or on a curvy yellow road. The most important part of the journey is to venture away from your comfort zone to find what your journey is. The real story is to find ourselves. I tell these three journeys because whether it's battling dragons on a Homeric Odyssey or fighting addiction, those who postulate that the hero's journey is to incorporate separate aspects of yourself into a more true and fuller self. Beyond the centrality of Dorothy's journey in the film, we encounter some of Jung's classic archetypes. More than battling a witch, which is Dorothy's chief hurdle and enemy. the shadow work is that she not try to dream up a perfect place somewhere over the rainbow. The wizard's shadow was obviously to be something bigger than he really was, right? Hiding behind the curtains, pulling these levers. And it takes tricksters sometimes. Another part of the story, Toto the dog is a trickster and pulls the curtain down, right? Part of what makes it so appealing is that the figures turn out to be vulnerable characters, which we can identify. The Wicked Witch is brought down by water, simple tool used in baptism. And the wizard, powerless, is exposed by the dog pulling down on the curtain. However, once the wizard gets outed and his flaws and frailties as a simple human being get revealed to all who are there, once the jig is up, as they say, the wizard's journey is towards a more authentic self. And in a way, his humanness, his mastery of ballooning, takes Dorothy home. Wizard of Oz was replete with characters full of transformation. The Scarecrow, right, finds his wisdom and the brain that he's always had he didn't believe in. The Tin Man, his own parallel quest through the use of his friends and his relationships, find that he's got heart, and the Lion discovers that despite his really timid nature, his concerns for his friends pull up his courage. As Yu Kowalski notes again in his sermon, Not Very Good Wizards, Dorothy's a pretty complex hero for the late 30s. Frank Baum, the author, he was married to the daughter of Matilda Jocelyn Gage. Does anybody know who Matilda Jocelyn Gage is? Like a feminist in the time of, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. And she, just on a side note, she was the one of the suffragist women who would not sell Black and Indigenous women out of the women's suffragist movement, and she eventually lost that debate, but she was the strongest voice that everyone be included. Baum married her daughter. So there was a progressive streak right in the early piece of that, and it makes it sort of subversive in many ways, because the story is, of course, that we hold the keys to our own salvation, right? Glenda the Good Witch doesn't say, hey, Dorothy, here's this holy book that will explain your situation. She doesn't say, trust and believe in the wizard and he will take care of all of your problems. She tells her she's got a journey to take. No true words have ever been said to anyone. It's a metaphor that just works, right? So, I believe that more than any other faith, it is our distinctive truth, our UU saving message to the world. It's led this book, our parallels with it has led this book to be attempted to be by many unsuitable for children. Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson back in the 90s wanted to get the campaign scrubbed from broadcast TV because it wasn't sufficiently Christian enough. Which is interesting, because the original story was thought to be an allegory of the Christian story of salvation. And Frank Baum wrote in the notes of some of the early drafts on the side that he thought that the ruby red shoes were symbolic of Jesus' protection and the protection that the blood sacrifice offers. Dorothy's journey takes on mythic proportions because she has this wicked witch, right, of the West. And references in Baum's early notes suggest that the slippers, which were originally silver, were kind of the powers of salvation that would pass her through. The witch, who obviously has sort of a devil kind of Satan thing. In thinking about Dorothy's journey from dreamy, impotent, frustrated girl to empowered young woman who bravely and instinctively throws water to save the Scarecrow and undo the witch unimaginably, we think about some of those young heroines. I think of Malaya, the Pakistani tween who got shot for defending her peers' right to get an education and has become in that way a potent girl power kind of symbol. I couldn't help but think of the truth that these are ordinary people who transform by extraordinary circumstances. The news that to a degree we might have to walk our own road and be the chief agent of our own salvation, to a degree is frustrating, of course. It's a disappointment, but if we live long enough, we do tend to stand up and brush ourselves off and realize that our own journey, much like the Buddhists say, is that the truth is not always simple. The message is that we all got a road to walk. Douglas Taylor opens up his sermon on The Wizard of Oz. There was a lot of them out there to look at, with the beautiful haunting song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Someday I'll wish upon a star. Join me. And wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Yeah, we're good. It's a mournful song. It's a beautiful song, right? And that why, oh, why can't I? Sometimes we don't get everything we want. It takes courage and discomfort, as some of us in this room know very intimately. But the message is spirituality is a player's game. You can't sit too far back and expect it to be something done for you. What Dorothy and Luke and Rocky and films like them, what Mahala in real life teaches us is that one's spiritual growth really takes exercise. You can earn your peace of mind and growth and skill by adventuring away from what is comfortable and returning back to where you were different. Whether we want to place it in a mythic frame or not, whether we want to feel like we are being witnesses or not, I think the image of life as a journey is an apt one. I think that's how seriously you feel like you're on a yellow brick path to a new you, how seriously one feels like they're on their own hero's or shero's journey, if you like, will probably be correlated to how much transformation and meaning you find across your life. Whether one defines it as religious, we're all pilgrims through the different stages of our lives, aren't we? As Linda Olson Peeble describes it, we fly into this life and we fly out of it. Birth and death are not exactly caused by a tornado dropping us into this strange and magical world, but it's an apt metaphor. The world is just as amazing and miraculous, and we just as lost as Dorothy is most of the time. So, we're on a yellow brick road. I wouldn't bet on an attack from flying monkeys. I'm a reasonable, rational person. But there will be trials that you cannot foresee. However, there will promise be some good witches on that path too. Imperfect friends who don't think they have enough heart or brains or courage will inexplicably teach you about love and truth and bravery. Maybe some of them are here. And the truth is we either adapt to our challenges or we flee from them, and we probably do a little of both. The truth is you can choose to live as if you were pursuing the Minotaur. You can also choose just as well to walk by the famed sword wedged in that stone and never even care to make a pull. It's up to you. How seriously, how mythically, how much of a journey you feel like you're on, as long as you basically behave yourself, will not be called upon out of you by anybody, probably too much by, except for you. What vigor and toward what version of yourself you want to be is among the most personal of matters. And better or not, really only your parents, your closest friends, maybe your kids will care enough to tell you that it's time to close your eyes and use the Force and to let go of the precious ring you, like Frodo, guard so jealously. We need stories that are the right combination of dreamy and realistic enough to fall into, so that we can look at ourselves and the challenges that living brings in a new way. Today, as this church always is, or at least this hour always should be, is a moment to look at where our sails and our navigation equipment might be taking us. Amen. Yeah. Oh, thanks. It is now time for our offertory, and today is a split plate service with one half going to the church's general collection operating funds, the other half going towards Darth Vader and the Empire's effort to rebuild the Death Star. Give generously. And now the choir. You want a microphone, Shana? There you go.
Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, study war no more.
I'll let you inside. Okay.
We got a very short hymn here. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound.
In closing, let us remind you that this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences and beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste, and blessed be.
Now our service truly begins.
There you go.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away beyond the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't
Now you know why I stopped at 2 lines. Thanks for being here, and thanks for coming.
What happened?
What's that?
It didn't
I-
light again?